When you think about everything that is currently happening, you truly have to wonder why more people aren't tuning in to listen to every word of the shit show. I mean,
people are saying that it's a show that has 4 hosts. I don't know why you need 4 people. I mean, I could say what they're saying all by myself. Why do they need to have so many people on the show? They're just losers who want to save the world. It's sad, really. So sad. Anyway, back to the news about the beautiful blowing up of bad people on their bad boats.
As far as that goes, I think we need to really ask ourselves, why would you not watch the shit show? After all, these people are the kind of people we want to keep out of America. They're so focused on stupid things, like the truth. And facts, obviously, they need to be stopped before they get a chance to wake everyone up to the poly crisis. That's when everything goes wrong at the same time.
All right, welcome to the shit show. My name's Andrea Edwards. Oh, you're muted, David.
He's muted. He will come back later.
Yes, no, coming back now. So my name's David Coe. I forgot my name and I forgot I was muted. So this is a great start for me this morning.
Yeah.
Terrific end to the week here. I'm Richard Busolato, and today I'm in the bottom left corner of your screen.
And my name is Joe Augustine. Well, good afternoon, you magnificent survivors of late-stage civilization. Welcome to the shit show. It's the only program that's brave enough to ask, are we absolutely still having access to the system? Because while you were trying to enjoy a quiet week, the world looked at the apocalypse bingo card and said, well, let's do this really quickly. Europe is sanctioning Israeli settlers while arguing about whether it's meant to. Eurovision has become a geopolitical hostage negotiation. And AI is drinking lakes and setting power grids on fire because the cloud turns out to be a less than accurate description of the tech. And somehow, that's not even the weird part. Smart glasses are back because apparently people will wear surveillance equipment on their faces as long as it helps you find the best tacos in town. Humans are outsourcing intimacy to AI companions, giving us Wired's Sad Wives of AI, which sounds like a dystopian novel, or perhaps a bad opening for Coldplay. And Australia cancelled a Trump Tower, proving that even luxury developers with bad taste have a line. Joining us today is researcher, fintech builder, AI strategist, co-founder of Aetna Research, advisor, community builder, former Aspen Institute senior fellow, and one of the few people professionally qualified to explain whether the future is a transformation or just a very sophisticated dumpster fire. He's our guest today, Dr. Marco Aboav.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And we're going to hand it over to David, who's not muted.
So yes, so Marco and I go back actually good fair way, and is someone I've always respected, and he's been and recently. So I'm just going to bring on why the show, in a sense, is that recently, kind of saw something from him about AI, and obviously everybody has been talking about AI, and he's someone who's been using AI, investing in AI, kind of like trying to make things forward in AI. And so he has a very kind of unique personal insight into that I think we like to know. And I think the question we really want to be asking is, should we really put our money in this thing or not? And of course, it's particularly relevant this time. And it's because, Trump is going to China, and he's basically bringing his whole kind of AI team with him, the A team of AI with him in that way. So, we're going to see a Cold War in AI. Is that part of what we're going to be seeing? What's going on? Because, most of these chips are actually made in Asia. It's kind of interesting to think about that. So, but anyway, so Marco is co-founder of Aetna Research. Is a AI lab for financial services. It basically, before Microsoft stole the word co-pilot, it was your co-pilot for investing. That's kind of how it was. But then Microsoft stole it and they're bigger. So that's kind of how it goes. And it helps institutional clients, asset owners in trying to see how they can actually, the way he described it is kind of like, steal the money back from the hedge funds, which is pretty cool thing to do if you think about that. And he's also very actively involved with community activity in Italy, especially in the technology area. He's a frequent lecturer on kind of fintech and AI and those areas at business schools and at kind of major business schools. And he was senior fellow at the Aspen Institute, and we can keep going on like this forever in that way. And we work together, which is probably, you know, the personal experience in that sense. So let's start with, you know, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and what really inspires you, what keeps you, kind of gets you out of bed in the morning.
Well, thanks, Devin, for the kind introduction. I mean, we, you know, as you mentioned, probably the last point is probably the most important when we work together. So, you know, we spend, you know, a long time, you know, discussing these topics for a long time. So yeah, I mean, again, thanks for having me. I would say my background is a little bit the kind of guy that started as an engineer and then said, hey, there is something out there in the economy and something interesting to learn. And, you know, throughout my career, I always try to combine a little bit this kind of two different point of view, the technical, which is important to understand, you know, the roots of the, you know, of things happening, but also at the same time, you know, the business side. And so for me, that's kind of a little bit the combo that I guess in these AI days, it's not just about, you know, what's going to happen in the AI space, but really, you know, what is the driving force behind the scene that could have an impact over, you know, a longer time horizon. You know, briefly on my background, again, I spent most of my professional career in London. I've been through, you know, I would say the status quo institutions. Bank. I work in Citigroup. I spent, you know, a few years working with David in a hedge fund setup. I've been also on the other side of the game, which is more like, you know, the new players, the digital wealth management players, innovating in the space. I managed to launch my hedge fund, AI hedge fund, you know, covering different asset classes. So I've been, again, kind of around this topic for a while from different point of views, technical and business. And what we end up, what I end up learning is we need something different, which is basically what I do with my firm, Aetna Research, which is really about giving, I wouldn't call it superpower, but definitely some useful architecture to asset owners, or anyway, institutionals, investment professionals, to build a financial solution faster for their own needs. That's really how to summarize, you know, in a nutshell what we do with my current firm.
Good again, and the reason I keep muting is because I'm fighting off a cold and cough and stuff, so I hop in between to interrupting. So you talk about sort of different sort of investing. So I think we were, you know, kind of like absolute return long only hedge funds and those sort of things. I think it's good to get a context of what that means in a way for many people. You know, how do they differ between, you know, my children putting their money into their pensions accounts as investing and what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to start from few numbers. First is that, you know, if you think about, you know, the stock market in general is a little bit more than $100 trillion market cap. If you consider, let's say, the debt market, you know, the government bonds, you know, the corporate bonds is another 150 trillion, something like that. And there is a tiny fraction that is focused on, you know, a different mandate, because, you know, most of the stock market is about getting unappreciated over time. You buy a stock because you expect some returns over a medium to long term horizon. But there are certain players like hedge funds where their goal is to actually being more tactical and opportunistic to deliver return in an absolute return, for meaning they care to make money, let's say every year kind of thing. Is not about economic cycles, so they can make money being long the market, they can make money being shorting the market. So it's a different mandate. The average guy is still buying stocks today for the medium to long term horizon, because they have their own goal. It could be pension, kids university, whatever is your goal, real goal. And the goal is to actually have some savings to offset inflation over time. But for certain players, again, we are talking about the hedge fund crowd is 3 trillion, maybe something like this. So it's still a tiny fraction compared to the global market. These guys are looking for, again, an absolute return mandate. So they in theory need to make money irrespective of the economic conditions. So that's really the big difference, I would say, between the two groups. Now we don't see hedge funds as we spend more time talking about Nvidia, all these kind of stocks, the capital markets, but our pensions are investing in hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds are investing in hedge funds, family offices. There is a lot of, and also like more and more there is retail access to these kind of vehicles, these kind of investments. So it's part of the ecosystem, but it's still like a tiny fraction if you put together, the total, market cap, the players involved in the capital markets.
So in that way, I mean, one of the things you didn't mention is, of course, that hedge funds may be 3 trillion, but they usually borrow a lot of money on the back of that. So they deploy a hell of a lot more than 3 trillion, maybe 10 to 100 times, depending on what they're doing, which is why they kind of make so much money overall. But then, what are hedge funds doing with AI, and how are they looking at this? What would you kind of think of that landscape from your own sort of perspective along, and what would you say?
Well, I don't believe we can say that is a new thing to have AI in this industry. If you think about I would say it's a much broader term, which is quantitative methods, science, applied science in the field. It's been with us forever. It's not a new thing. It's been decades in. Of course, there were different chips 20 years ago, different data available 15, 20 years ago, but there's always been this attitude to incorporate as much as you can in terms of data and science in the investment process. So it's not something new, but at the same time, I think what we kind of feel every day about the last few years of disruption, AI disruption, that is becoming more, I would say, evident across any type of person out there, is the fact that the boost we got in the last few years, that's the disruption. So now what it means is that AI could accelerate your research process, could accelerate your compliance process, could accelerate any workflow that you have in this kind of hedge fund, or anyway in the broader investment landscape. And this is the disruption, because you are much faster than before. It's unclear if you are with higher accuracy than before, but definitely you are faster than before. And then
I like this comment where it's unclear whether you have higher accuracy than before. It's like you're making your mistakes faster.
Absolutely. That's the thing is there is always a big difference between the bold, silly statements, right, and what actually is the pragmatic view of this.
So you're making it faster with more confidence, making your mistakes faster with more confidence.
Potentially, yes. So what we see, as the first wave of this innovation is that people were using, think about ChatGPT for any kind of questions, and you take for granted the answer, and you put that answer somewhere in a report. There were some scandals about even, big consultancy firms, using completely fabricated data. There is a lot of misuse, which is typical of the first wave. This is a new wave compared to the applied science, the internet wave. And as any new wave, there is always some misuse at the beginning, scandals, and then now the typical angle here is, are we kind of in a bubble or not? Is transformational or not? So it's definitely transformational, and I see every day, even in my job. But the hype is still the typical hype of a first wave transformation, where you expect more, but actually you get less. So that's the reality, right?
So so what does that mean in terms of, so how do hedge funds see their portfolio positions with AI? I mean, not in terms of how they do it, but in terms of, are they worth investing in?
Well, I mean, the thing when we talk
because you're saying you expect more but get less. So are they doing it because, are they trading on the expectation, or are they trading on the reality?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I always mention when people ask me about, capital markets is that investors trade on expectations. It's very hard to trade on reality. And the expectation is what's going to happen over a certain time horizon. Now, if you look at, when we talk about AI companies, is NVIDIA an AI companies? Is Google an AI companies? Is Microsoft an AI companies? Now, the reality is you are not buying AI, you are buying, capital expenditure companies that are investing an insane amount of money on making an infrastructure that we don't know if it's going to be relevant in 3-4 years, 5 years. And we will discuss this later, but this is really the point. So so far, the successful ones are being the ones that actually are investing massively for the future, but the future is uncertain. So you're definitely trading or investing in expectations, but not on the current reality of what it is. So this is, I think, is a important point. So when you buy the top, the biggest stocks, that we call it AI companies, you're not really buying AI. You're really buying, I would say, the infrastructure 2.0.
I think one of the questions always was, the dot-com boom in that sense was that everyone's borrowing to buy these stocks, and the companies themselves had nothing. I remember seeing an internet thing where you could go hunting on your screen. I mean, it's a terrible thing to imagine doing, where you could move your cursor, wait for the deer to come, and you'd actually manage to drive some rival somewhere in that way. And there's nothing behind it, right? Wasn't even sure whether there's a real deal or not, actually. Hopefully not. And but a lot of these expenditures are really real, and Google and things like that is a real company. Do they have the cash to support this thing, or are they borrowing, or how are they doing this?
Yeah, I mean, the typical situation when you set a very high expectation for the future is that someone has to finance your future. And so what happens is these big players are part of a circular ecosystem, where in order to finance their futures, they need to find the buyers of that futures. And the buyers of that futures are, if you think about, OpenAI, Anthropic, these big firms that are considered let's say the next future, they need the the big AI listed company like Google, Microsoft, all of these firms, because it's a circular deal. So they invest in them to get more capacity to buy, what they can build in the future. So this is the problem we face, and which is typical in any high expectation environment where, big things are going to happen. Someone has to finance that big thing happening. And so you create this circular ecosystem where, one side is the buyer, but the buyer gets funded by the seller. So it's kind of what we face right now, and is a very strong circular effect that we obviously among financial professionals, there is big discussion about this. Who is going to finance via debt all of these big investments? But somehow the actors involved they're all the same, right? So they are all a small group of big and huge entities helping each other to build this high expectation scenario and environment to keep, we use this expression of, the kick the can down the road. It is essentially what it is, really.
Anyone else want to chip in? I'm very happy to carry on.
It's a fascinating story, right? And those of us of a certain age have seen this before. It was called it was vendor financing in 1999, and in Japan it was cross shareholding in the late 80s. But it always ends up the same way, that when you run out of real buyers to believe in the story, you start buying each other's story. And I think the same thing is more or less happening in private equity now, because there are no real buyers of these companies that are sitting on their books. So you buy and sell the companies from each other, and you justify the valuations, and you keep on levying a fee to the underlying investor for doing so. It's very circular. It's very corruptive.
Is it different to the past? Is it more intense now than the past, or is it the same as you've seen in the past?
I think it's just the numbers are bigger,
Right.
A lot bigger.
Yeah.
Sorry. The phenomenon is the same.
Yeah, right. It's funny because listening to David talking about the .com. So I was in Boston during the .com boom and bust, working in public relations. So I was selling the media these companies, but I could also see the back end of these companies, and there was nothing, like literally nothing. They were telling a story. So I'm very cynical about what we're being promised. But right back at the beginning, Marco, when you were talking about, you can write a report faster, and we're seeing all these silly mistakes, right? And so from an environment perspective, we're being asked to slow down. And now we're moving into a place where there's this speed of delivery, but ultimately, is there really a win out of that? It's not even when it becomes accurate. If we can just keep doing everything faster, what does that mean ultimately? Does that make sense? Like from an environment perspective, it can't go any faster. We don't have any more raw materials to go any faster. Like all of those things are still the same, and yet we've got this technology that's pushing forward. And yeah, it's just one of those things that I can't kind of put together in my head. You got any thoughts on that one?
No, absolutely. I think, in the first, I would say the big wave, there is always a massive inefficiency. So think about the number of people that are using, let's say, ChatGPT for professional needs. It's massive. But now the question is, do we need all these people asking inefficient questions to ChatGPT? Or, in the near or long-term futures, we're going to have potentially less people doing, let's say, admin jobs or legal jobs. So I think now we are probably at the peak utilization because it's inefficient. Everybody's trying to figure out how to be in this new ecosystem, let's say. And of course, we as humans, we always trying to get, to adapt faster, and get something that, we can actually leverage for our everyday activities. But if you think about, professions like lawyers, financial analysts, doctors. It's not my call, but it's a general opinion about the fact that in the medium term, this technology are gonna serve consumers, and they're gonna kind of replace parts of the workforce involved in certain type of jobs, which means in a way that is actually more efficient, because now it's very high friction, inefficient use of these technologies, but we're going to have less people misuse this technology. So that's one part. So now I would say is the inefficiency and is an inefficiency cycle where we use ChatGPT for $20. We are basically OpenAI is subsidizing us to use it. They are losing money serving us. If there was a fair pricing, I'm not sure how many people are going to be there using ChatGPT for $150 per month, or $200 per month, or $1,000 per month. So it's the typical first wave cycle where inefficiencies is at the peak, and then we'll figure out how to go to the next stage where certain type of activities are going to be done by machines, definitely more. Probably open source, more technologies are going to be more efficient, so the energy consumption is expected to go down on this kind of technology at some point. So there is a lot of moving parts, but definitely now is the most inefficient moment of these technologies, in my opinion.
Well, I think to add to what Andrea is saying and what you're saying is that if you think of the world's energy consumption over time, basically it has increased because efficiencies have allowed more things to be done. So, and that then increases the energy use. So per unit of what you're doing, you now don't need the guy to do the financial analysis for you. The machine's going to do that for you. And later on, the machine's going to be more accurate as well, along with that. So you're going to analyze even more things as a result. And when people talk about how efficiency brings about improvements, they rarely consider the actual incremental additions that come as a result. As that, but of course we live in the whole planet, and we're pushing against the boundaries of that. That makes a big difference. So I just want to kind of add that to that point. But going back to AI and AI investing and so on, then when you look at these at the moment, we're not stock pickers. We're not trying to make recommendations and stuff and so on in that way. But when you look at these companies and you say they're effectively this circle of financing themselves and funding themselves, does anything actually then, what does that do? Is that a red light for you, or are you sort of like you just got to be nimble and keep going with it or whatever? Well, what's the sense that you think is the right thing for people to think about?
I think there was this big debate recently that gives you exactly the current situation, in the investment world in general. Big debate on some frauds on Anthropic, investors piling up in vehicles to invest in Anthropic, which is still a private company. It might become public very soon. And so the reality is that what you see today on your screen is infrastructure companies. This is not what people call AI native companies. So these are companies that are serving infrastructure for the next generation, and we haven't seen yet a full explosion of AI native companies because they're not still there listed in public markets. So I think,
what would you describe as an AI native company? How does that mean about being a native?
Native, is really about the first is the DNA of the firm. So today with AI, you can really build, essentially a company with a very small fraction of the workforce we used to do, like just 10 years ago. So that means that if you build your entire, company infrastructure, company architecture, you can have essentially a business that, Sam Altman said that, you can build, a billion plus valuation firms with one employee. Now, I don't think we are very far from that scenarios. Definitely, we're talking about outliers, but we're not so far from that scenarios, which means you map it,
You do have a certain key man risk.
absolutely, I totally agree. But at the same time, you also have an AI key risk, right? Because if
Yeah.
for whatever reason Anthropic is not, the service is down, you are down. So there is another element on that, but really it's a new way of of building businesses. Is a way where you rely less on human workforce. That's the sad reality. And actually, if it designed well, it could be much, much faster and leaner to do business. Now, this is a little bit against the concept of doing entrepreneurship, right? Because you build to coordinate people. At the end of the day, a company, the CEO is coordinating a layer, and the other layer is coordinating a lot of layers. In this new world, you can build a coordination of AI agents, right? And so this is kind of a new way of doing entrepreneurship, which was never there before. That's also the second wave we are going to see, because now, if this infrastructure, the Google, the Microsoft are investing well, and they're going to get some returns out of these massive investments, this new generation of firms are going to be in an environment where it's very easy to build these AI native companies. So that to me is the definition of it. If you ask me, if there are companies out there being totally AI native, not really, not yet there. But you see some, glimpse of things happening, even on my daily basis, where if I think about what is the typical activity of an investment firm, 95% could really be automated with AI, and
So
you really a fraction of what.
95%, wow.
Is that why all these firms are, kind of all these tech firms are laying off their staff? I mean, they're doing that in quite big sizes, right?
Yeah, I mean, the problem when you were not born in this new world is that you were designed to build, again, a big company means a first layer, and then a second layer of people, and then the developers. So think about the big announcements. The Salesforce is many US firms are facing this I would say big decisions, right? Because at some point you have to pick what you want to be in the next years, and it's not going to work in a gradual way. So you have to take bold decisions, which means reinventing the way you do business, which means definitely the workforce is going to be affected by it in a massive way. Coming back to the point of, do we need 1,000 people using ChatGPT and being inefficient, or we need a centralized ecosystem where you actually save OpenAI, you save on OpenAI bills every month. So this is a little bit the big question in the boardrooms today, because it's you need bold decisions, and still similar to what we have seen, David, or everyone else in banks, right? We were measuring the value, the market cap of a bank in terms of branches. We have seen them dying, right? But this was before AI.
Yep.
So what's going to happen now? We definitely going to see companies reshaping themselves, but it's going to be much faster. And if you don't take bold decisions, the risk is that you become irrelevant. You become, totally out of whack in terms of pricing. So you need to act fast. You need to act in a brutal way, I would say, to survive in this new world, because everyone is faster. So you need to be faster. You cannot say, hey, but I know this market. The typical pushback is, I've been in this market for 20 years. But that's not the way I would feel comfortable running a company.
And
right.
And Joe, what do you have any thoughts from kind of your experience of using it, testing it, and your investment kind of experience, what you see being around between the same wave?
Is definitely the aspect that is kind of curious is that if I think about my typical day, I just give you an example to extrapolate what could happen to many people in the field. Is most of the activities that before were requiring a small team to handle, from admin to sales and marketing, what are the typical function of any company or of any business, is really about you need a sales and marketing function, you need an admin function, you need a finance function, you need a product function. All these things are, I would say, in a very small setup, because you have less friction. They are already automated by, at least what my experience, like at least 70-80%, which means that alone I can be 5 to 7x more productive on each single function. So when I spend 1 hour on any activity, now I'm like 5 to 7x more productive. Not in all of them, because the key aspect to measure how you're going to see disruption is if the activity costs you a lot of money. Think about relying on a lawyer or an investment professional. The second is repetitive. So do you spend time doing the same activity many times per week, per day, per month? And the third, do you have some data to make this learning process faster for a machine? So if these 3 elements are there, it's much easier to actually speed up, let's say, the workflow, internal workflow by AI. So that's the way I think about, and that's the way I face it every day, this kind of disruption. And I would not be surprised if and even like the inner circle people that I know very well, they are kind of doing the same. They're on the same path. I don't know if we are definitely we're not the outliers, but we definitely like the technology, but we understand the implication on the business. So I think this is very important to, if we want to extrapolate again, a kind of a small trend that we see in communities, right? That things are brewing, and they're brewing massively, and so that's kind of the consequence of what is going to be the world we're going to face in 12 months. It's going to be very different, in my opinion, compared to what we see today.
Interesting. I have some thoughts, but maybe before I give them, I want to see whether other people
well, I was thinking about a couple of ideas about first of all, like we talk about underpricing or not fully pricing stuff. I think we still haven't priced the internet correctly, right? According to the way people talk about it, the way it's used, it's asymmetrical. It hasn't maybe been priced correctly. If we priced it correctly, if we price water correctly, it'd be different as well. But I think what happens is that the next thing grows out of it, where the value of it kind of covers the rest of it. I like the internet. I think the internet's paid for by e-commerce. E-commerce then becomes the reason why it makes sense for it not to be fully charged for as it would normally be charged for. And I think what AI is going to do as well, it's going to empower the next thing. So I was looking at and then this is I know it's not a popular view, but always how the next tech solution comes along to solve the previous solution that or the previous problem that it created, right? I really think AI is going to push us along to the next phase where we will be able to break some of the barriers that we have right now that we face with conventional physics, right? I mean, we talk about the pushing the envelope of quantum physics right now. Some of the things that we take as standard challenges and barriers to what we can do, the outer limits, may literally cease to be if we break them. I must caveat what I'm saying right now with the context. I watched the documentary yesterday, the age of disclosure, which is a series of interviews, and it's a documentary that featured interviews with high-level government officials in the U.S. and it's all about UAPs and UFOs, and part of it was to talk about technologies and the idea of quantum science and quantum physics. All the stuff we're talking about is kind of limited by the physics of what we know today and the what we know about the physics of the electron, for instance. There's a possibility we're on the verge of the next, where we talk about things like we talk about things in terms of the limitations of time, where we think about the growth of AI to necessarily mean it's going to be the expansion of even more energy consumption. And I think there's going to be a point where it actually becomes a lot more efficient. Like the way LLMs are being developed and the problem that they actually need to solve for is a way to make it more efficient, more to be more elegant, right? So like in terms of coding, for instance, when we code, we might come up with something that works, but it's 4 million lines of code. And then someone who's really very good at coding goes like, I can take it down to 2,000 lines. And that becomes a greater efficiency that goes into the market, into the systems. And I think if we translate that to markets as well, that can kind of work. So the kinds of efficiencies that we've been able to bring to things like flat screen TVs, automobile manufacturing, computers, just building buildings in general, I think we can also sort of rely some of that to happen in the AIs, and AI is going to help itself become better in that respect. And I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of hopeful for the next phase where we kind of break the barrier of the speed of light. I mean, there's some things that we think that we can't do simply because we can't imagine how it can be done otherwise. And I think some of that technology is on the verge of happening, either through a case of our endeavors, or if, again, like I said, based on what I was watching yesterday and been hanging around for the last few days, the possibility that technology might be revealed to us from other sources that'll take us across the line. You know, hopefully take us away from our nuclear ambitions as well, into a better form of ourselves.
Yeah. One thing I get from what Mark's describing and what you're saying along in there is very much that, you know, there's no doubt AI makes you more powerful in terms of what you can do as an individual. That then goes to what happens if everybody then went and do that. So it goes into this sort of governance, but the governance is a different sort of governance to what people talk about in terms of AI governance. At the moment, the talk of AI governance is about, you know, the information that's used, you know, is a privacy type things. But actually, it really is a way of saying, actually, are we willing to allow AI to govern us? In some ways, I mean, you know, you vote for politicians that you don't know what they're going to do anyway. You know, look at Keir Starmer at the moment and the trouble he's having. Is that any better than simply allowing an AI to be the governing body of the whole world? So that actually the AI then says, well, yeah, you've got a great idea, but no, you shouldn't do that. You're not going to be allowed to. And if you do, I'll zap you when you type on the keyboard or something, or take you out, you know, literally or metaphorically, whichever it is that governance requires, that the AI then determines the right thing. Because I think all of this sort of, AI can do this, AI can do that, absolutely. But the problems we have are not about what we each individually can do, but that we have no acceptance of the sort of boundaries of what each individually should do.
Interesting. All right, so I want to. I'm looking at the time. So should we? We got our next question for Marco.
Yes.
Although I do like going south. Banning crime, for instance, would go a long way. It's kind of an interesting idea.
Well, I was just going to add my 2 cents to that particular comment about banning crime. It is banned. That's why it's crime.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you don't get immediately zapped for it. I mean, with an AI, you can imagine a case that your phone explodes and kind of takes you out. Or you're all implanted with a neural chip. As soon as you think about crime, your brain's zapped.
Oh dear.
It's quite possible to do. You allow AI to govern. Or you're not even permitted to have neurons that think about crime.
Oh dear.
All right, so and that sort of goes to, what's that sort of that essential truth about human nature that until you commit a crime, it's not a crime. So free will, right?
That thing,
free will conversation,
which is a crime against AI.
Yeah. Can I ask a couple of quick questions of Marco? Just really quickly. So, obviously, like everybody else, I'm in the AI overwhelmed world where everyone's talking about it, and it's a bit tedious. I feel like we're well and truly into the .com place where you don't need to say AI anymore. Everybody knows you're using AI. Do you remember that point where .com just needed to disappear, but people kept using it? I feel like if you're going to get on top of AI, this is the year to do it. Past this year, I can't imagine it's going to be cost effective for the majority. So I think this is the last real chance for that sort of, the pioneer generation of AI will be over soon, and then the controls will start coming in. But the other thing is, going through the .com boom and bust is any AI tool that I invest in, my time and my money, I really look into it deeply. And I hear people recommending AI solutions, which when I look at them, I'm like, they're not going to be around and they're going to disappear. Or they might be consumed into a bigger organization, or they might just go. And so there's a lot of people building a lot of stuff they just like when the .com boom crash happened, like businesses just disappeared overnight. So I think that's another big risk that I'm not hearing people. It's like everyone forgets that that's what happened last time. What are you seeing on that front? Or both fronts?
I would say is the typical discussion we have when you talk about AI wrapper. If I build something on top of someone else, my futures depend on someone else.
Yeah.
So of course you see this explosion of consumer apps, SME apps, enterprise apps partially as well, and they come up with a certain pricing. I go to a consumer and I say, hey, I have this wonderful thing for your pets management, and it's $20 per month. Now the problem is, if one of the big boys behind the scene is going to hike the pricing, suddenly this middleman is going to higher the pricing, and that is the situation where everybody's kind of saying, hey, we have no business here, because I cannot afford to charge $50 or $60 per month for your pets management application. So I think right now we live in a huge subsidy world, because everybody get subsidized by these people that have this massive expectation that things are going to happen, and investors are like, think about OpenAI and Anthropic are funding this future. But the present is really about subsidizing everyone. So for me, this is kind of, that's why the first way is the inefficient wave. Everybody's kind of using, it's free money out there, and everybody's kind of wondering, oh, I can do everything now because it's so cheap. But this is not going to be cheap for a long time. And so obviously, as a consumer, we kind of say, hey, if whatever ChatGPT cost me $100, I'm not sure I'm gonna use that version anymore. I'm gonna find some Chinese alternative or something cheaper. But think about all the ecosystem out there that is relying somehow on this big player behind the scene. They face the same existential crisis at some point. So I think that, again, that's why I agree with David. We need to consume less energy, and so as a consequence, fossil fuels. But at the same time, we also live in a world right now that is totally inefficient because it's just a subsidy from someone else, and we think this is going to last forever, which is a typical economist view, right? You project what you have seen in the last 12 months. That's the way people think, right? But that's not true, because now we are really facing a situation where if for whatever reason you have to pay 3-4 times what you paid today, it's huge. It's huge because we're going to see a lot of pushbacks and a lot of new firms, or this kind of still software firms, moving to AI, dying in a quarter, really. So that's the way I see. That's why I'm a little bit skeptical of anything that is built on a RAPA type of proposition, because you might make some money because you really love pets and you're offering something that really works for the clients. But if you're relying on someone else, that business is not going to exist in 2-3 years because it's completely subsidized right now.
Yeah. I've yet to see a single economist who has a jagged curve in their forecast, by the way. So, it's always an extrapolation to infinity and beyond. No, I think people are really missing that point. It's super important that when you get to standalone economics, will there be a real demand, or is this a demand that's artificially there because of the pricing subsidy that at the moment is permeating through the system? I think the bulls obviously say that the demand will be there, and the bears are saying it's a bubble. The truth is probably somewhere in between, but which way will you lean? No idea.
So, but for someone like me, Marco, who I'm never going to build an AI, space. It's not who I am. So I need to build on something, and I'm very conscious of the choices that I make because I've seen it. But the company I'm doing a lot on at the moment is a company called Replit, and I found out that Accenture has invested like 800 million in it. So I figure, well, that's a good sign that that's a company that's going to keep going. So I'm not going to be able to build it. What's your advice for people like me?
No, I think first of all, it's very important to be conscious about how you're changing your behavior first, because I think the last 12 to 24 months is like massive. We've never seen something like this. And it looks free. It looks pretty much infinite possibilities. And so it's important to really sketch properly how you think these kind of technologies are useful for you, because most of them is more like fancy application, but what is actually the ones that they have a very big impact on your life as a consumers. That's the first aspect, because there is a lot of, it's like the similar when you see your phone and you open up your phone, how many apps do you have on the phone, and you realize that you use 5%. So maybe it's time to a bit of phone gardening out there. So it's really, that's the way we do. We accumulate stuff, right? Like a house is similar. It's there are very few people who are very strict about what's in it, what's in out. Just if you have done a lot of moves in your life.
Mhm.
Like when I was in London, I changed houses a few times, and I realized that maybe I need to be lean every time I move in and out, right? And similar, to our own life, we need to think in this way. We need to be lean because we don't need a lot of things that today is provided. And also, if you look at the other side of investments world and so on, is really about the key aspect is to be sometimes patience. You don't need to rush. The investment world is never about rushing to something, but it's really about having a balanced view of what could be achieved. So that's kind of that's why trading and investment is huge, is completely different thing, right? We need to stick to investments as a consumers and not really into trading, because trading is built to actually get the money out of you, right? So investment was our own typical life affected by this application. Is getting back to my point about how many apps you're going to have in your phone. Probably you're not going to have a phone. You're going to have a simpler life, of a voice AI, interact with few applications that you actually use every day. The gardening app, the pets app that is, called by a system, is going to be really focused on what you actually makes your life happier. But if you look at your phone right now, I'm pretty sure there is 90%, like everyone, right? 90% of apps that are completely irrelevant, and you add it once and use it sometimes, so maybe you're still paying a subscription. So that's, to me, the lean way of thinking about these things is very important, because when things are going to be repriced, we're going to see a huge change in consumer behaviors.
David, we've probably got time for one more question. Is there anything that you desperately wanted to ask?
Well, I was going to make a comment, and then I'll ask the thing. And the comment is, of course, I'm finding a lot of my apps now asking for a subscription. So that's really interesting what you're saying there, when they used to be free. So that's happening along in that way along. But on the other side, I think, so final word in that sense, right? So if someone's coming along and sort of asking, look, this AI stuff is really amazing, I'm going to, get more involved in this. I'm going to as my kind of savings investments in that way. I know you don't want to make specific predictions and whatever it is and so on, but what does that sound like to you? Is that like a red light flashing for you, or is that like a green light to say, people are really understanding this now, or what does that do for you?
I think when you think about in general this kind of opportunities out there, sometimes you don't need to create a good service, and so I think sometimes we need to figure out, when we think about sectors, we think about I don't know, like software for pharmaceutical, or workflow for painters. There is a lot of small niches out there that actually could be very sticky to the users. And the question is that the downstream job is going to be changed. So who you are serving. So I think the key aspect is who you're going to serve in 10 years. And coming back to my point about what could be automated, is very expensive job if it's repetitive, and if you have data to replicate the learning of the individual. But if you look around, how many jobs in our real economy are going to move, think about, in the construction space or other industries, I think we're going to still have certain type of workforce out there for many, many, many decades. Now, the question is, maybe lawyers is in danger, because, it's an expensive job. It's repetitive. If you draft a non-disclosure agreement, it could be different for certain clauses, but the core is the same. and could you learn this process? Putting thousands of documents into a repository. Yes, of course. So I think we need first to understand who is going to be the buyer of what you buy, because then everything else is going to play out in terms of if that job is going to stay, someone needs your service. And so that's the way I typically think about opportunities. If I don't see that job being there in the next 5 to 10 years, what I'm funding now. And so this is, to me, the key aspect to evaluate. So I give you an example. Robotics, everybody's talking about robotics, but high accuracy robotics, coming back to the point we mentioned before, is the thing. Because if you're in the pharmaceutical space, you need high accuracy. So, and that is the barriers to entries that are relevant. But if you need to build a robot for, the Amazon type of plant type of activities that is just moving piece from A to B, and it's just some computer vision to get that product, that that stuff is actually the stuff you need to move from A to B, you're going to have a lot of competition out there for this kind of solution. So I think coming back to my point of understanding who is your buyer, who is the buyer of the service you're going to invest in the medium to long term, and if it's going to be there, that's the key for me, the first criteria out of many. But that's the thing is, sometimes people we get obfuscated by, it's a great technology, but for
Yeah.
right.
So figure out what really is your value proposition, and then decide whether AI is part of delivering that.
And if the buyer is going to be there for a long time.
Right, that's your value proposition, right? Whether which is...
But that robotics example is a great one, because the simple robots, you're not going to invest in an American company making that when you can buy those robots cheaper somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
as an example.
And unless Trump tells you to.
Yeah, even then, right? Yeah. Interesting.
Even then, it's a tough sell.
He will charge you tariff if you don't.
Yeah. All right, and Marco, we know you need to go, so I'll take you off the screen. But thank you. I think we could talk for a long time.
Yes.
About this, but I think that what you were just doing there for me in particular is you just tilting my brain a little bit in that longer sort of term, because everyone's so in the moment that then I feel like the people are just like just my own experience. I hear people talking about stuff and I'm like, but what's the guarantee for that? Like, do you really think they're going to be there? And are you really going to spend all that time and effort? Not necessarily money right now, but what's the long term? And people push back and they go, oh, but the people behind it are really smart. I'm like, I don't give a shit how smart they are, because I have met so many smart people in tech who didn't make it past the finish line, right? And I think that's something that, in the excitement, people are not doing that longer term thinking, which is hardly surprising because the world isn't exactly long term thinking at the moment. But that was great.
Thank you
so much,
guys.
Thank you, Marco.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thanks.
You too. Take care.
Bye. There we go. That was great.
Yeah, it's an eye opener, and I mean, he made several points that are really worth re-emphasizing. But the one with the subsidy, I think the common man doesn't understand how cheap it is to use these tools now, because there's someone else paying for it. Yeah. And that's not going to remain the case for very long, because the companies involved in the space are bleeding money like there's no tomorrow. And at the moment, the market is buying the story.
Yes, this is, first one's free, right?
Yeah, but again, it reminds me of the social media revolution, right? So, I was there at the beginning of that. I don't know if you guys remember the first messengers apps. Yeah. That was kind of the bit, and then MySpace was kind of in the mix. And very quickly, when you don't pay money, you become the product. And here we are today, right? So if it continues to be cheap, then we are the product. And even and we're seeing that with the fact that all of our information, everything we're putting in, one of the AI tools is basically taking everything that you're sharing and putting it in. So we are already the product that's training these tools, and then people are getting up in arms about, oh, my private conversations, da 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 da. So well, if you don't want that, you got to pay more money, right? So we're in that phase again, where we're not thinking individuals, we're not thinking enough about what this means. But then you've got the other bigger story, and when he was talking about the interlinking of all of the tech firms, and there was that some economists did this arrows where everyone's investing in everyone else, and that's where the bubble sort of concept really sort of started to
it has the hallmarks of all the great traditional bubbles going back. I'm not sure how it was with tulip bulbs, but was certainly the case with railroads 150 years ago. That at the end there are no buyers left, so you need to buy and sell from each other to justify the pricing.
But bigger than we've ever seen, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely in that way. But I think the thing that made me reflect is this aspect where what it's doing is it is allowing you to make fewer choices along what you need to do in that sense. It's facilitating many of those things, so you can just go ahead. It seems like you have more choices because you can do whatever you like, but in reality you're not having to think about those choices in that way at all, because you don't have to pay the cost of having to think about it. You don't have to bear the cost of thinking about it. So in that sense, it kind of then says, well, by and large, for the majority of people, what it's going to do is going to reduce what they are. It's going to be a very effective tool to kind of propel itself, because it can effectively direct choices in a much more efficient way. In that sense, I don't think personally that's what we need at the moment. I think we need the opposite. I just come from a conference in Assisi, the home of a saint called Francis, who gave up his wealth for kind of poverty as such. But what I realized when I was doing that was actually, it wasn't so much of rejection of wealth. It was actually to say, with less, I actually have more. And that's because with less, I feel the need for connections more. I feel the need for relationships more. Whereas if I have everything I want, then I don't actually have any of those sense of needs and things in that way. I feel the sense for other sort of things in that way. And I have a feeling this is what AI is actually doing most, is taking that sense of need for connection relationship. When Marco started talking about entrepreneurship, and what you're doing is you're building layers of connections. You're building layers of kind of connections with other people. You want to do this, you connect with them, they do that, and then they go on and do that. You're actually removing all of that in that very stark way. You can be the one-man billion-dollar company without any of the connections that you have, because people have a place where they work and they go out, they have a drink afterwards, and any of that kind of stuff, which is considered as inefficient. They can just go out and have a drink without having to meet at work.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a massive rupture coming in many ways, but with sort of everything sort of coming together at the same time. It's the poly crisis, obviously, but I don't know. This is part of the story, but the idea of not building on someone else's wrapper, like I've got some great things I'd love to build, and it doesn't feel intelligent to me to build on somebody else's wrapper, but I don't have any other options but to do that, right? So that was interesting. Joe, what did you think?
I think we're stuck on the idea of price in one way. We always think about things in a dollar sense. There is a price of not doing things as well. The price of it, as in the lost opportunity of not using a good tool, for instance, right? And I find there is like with some young people, I see that fashionable rejection of AI, right? It's like we won't do it, we won't touch it. I don't want to get close to it. There is something lost in it, in the sense that you are missing out something on the ability to do that. For instance, like if you talk about from an individual perspective, to learn about AI, to use AI, or even from a company's perspective, yes, you can talk about all the things that you lose from it. Yes, and you have to ask the price and go like, well, is there a good case for it, right? I mean, if I look into a company and you go like, well, there's so many inefficiencies in the company, we talk about we've got to use the same measurement, the same kind of tool to measure both sides of it. And so if we're gonna say that AI is inefficient, then we have to go to humans and say, well, how are humans inefficient? How are and do we think that that's a fair price to pay if we want to do that? If we have like for instance, you talk about business risk, right? You talk about wrapping it. I think I look at the reason why I've run a solo business for my entire life is that I didn't want to build on the idea. I didn't want to build on having other people. I didn't want to build on having to pay rent in a place, right? So, and that's kind of a layer that I will have to build on. I have to build on people, and I know some people are going to have the view that it's regrettable that I'm not the kind of person who wants to build that way, but I'm kind of not, because I think it's a risk as well, because people can be disappointing. And when you have a downturn, you're going to talk about having to pay for mouth that feed, and you're the one who has to feel bad because you have to take the tough decisions. There's a price that's being paid in traditional business as well. So I kind of think we can overly focus ourselves on a perspective and not see how it's similar in another way to something else, right? Because I was thinking about, like, if you talk about the tool as well, using AI as a tool and how critical it is right now. It seems to be critical and may not be in the end. You just have to think about the fax machine, right? If you had a business back in the day, you had to have a fax machine simply because everybody else seemed to have a fax machine. And if you want to do anything with a lawyer, then you had to send it over by fax. Could I take a scan of it and send it to you by email? No. We have to get it by fax. For whatever reason, that was the thing. So you had to have this fax machine. Was a fax machine good? Yeah, for the time that it was. But then we kind of moved on from it as well. It kind of changed. We still work in terms of images and documents. We've just changed that little technology that we use in the middle. But yeah, lots of money wasted on fax machines. I still think I've got rolls of thermal paper somewhere around that have gone black.
When I was in London, I used to send faxes to my mates in Australia rather than writing letters. They'd land in the office.
Yeah,
you can imagine. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting conversation, right? The whole story is very interesting. David?
Yeah, just the fax thing. I had a family holiday once where my sister had to receive some documents, and we got a fax machine along, and overnight the document came and kept spilling out, and pages and pages and pages all over the floor of the place where we were staying. And of course, like those documents, maybe 1 or 2 pages were read, but anyway, but that was kind of a lifelong memory of fax machines.
Do you remember when it was that shiny roll of paper, not the individual paper?
Papers,
Thermal paper.
Yeah,
we're all aging ourselves.
If you didn't maintain your blade properly, what it would do is that the document will come out, and then the machine would crumple it for you right at the end.
I think one thing that comes up over and over in that sense, the word efficiency in that way, and we implicitly take that to mean something good. The process of efficiency is about changing how things are done. And this is very much, Adam Smith, right from the beginning of, The Wealth of Nations. In his book on the Wealth of Nations, it talks about efficiency, division of labor, how that creates that in that way. But what Marco was talking about in terms of that value proposition is the connection of purpose. And that greater connection of purpose is very much decimated by thinking about efficiency. Because purpose is not necessarily measured in efficiency. And I think that's one of the issues which implicitly AI brings out without anyone really thinking about it in that way. All the conversations about AI is about economic efficiency, as in transactional efficiency, efficiency of a multiplier of money, efficiency of an augmenter of activities. But interestingly, what Marco was saying is, is it a good thing to use or not? Actually, who's your customer? What are they after?
Yeah.
But what AI is saying is, you can have your idea, you can do it, and you can put it forward, which is again this field of dreams. Build it and they will come. Kind of approach. And we keep slipping into that. We keep thinking that's what it is.
Yeah, it's right. I know that we will be talking about this every single show we do in some form or another, because it is such a central
absolutely
part of our lives now, and making sense. I think if people could try and look ahead rather than sitting in it, because like I think of I built this news platform, right, because I needed something, and I hate the idea that 2,000 people around the world could be building exactly the same or a very similar tool, using all of that energy to do exactly the same thing that I've done, to customize something that was important to me. And then there's, and you think of the chats, the same question being asked by a million people. You may or may not get the same answer. I heard the other day that if you're a Harvard professor asking a question, I can't remember which I think it was Claude, if you're a Harvard professor versus a working class person, your answers will be very, very different. The language will be very, very different based on who you are, and the accuracy of the answer drops the lower your perceived status, according to the AI, right? There's all these things going on out there that are like, okay, but the amount of stuff that's everyone's doing the same stuff, using this energy, creating these images, it's like, stop it,
Yeah, I'm not sure which end that plays me when I ask you the question. Can't understand the answer. Is that because he perceives me as far more intelligent than I am, or is it because he's perceived me as far less, and so it just throws out wrong answers?
Yeah. I'm still a Google gal as far as my searches go. I don't know who wants to start. We've obviously got the China visit, pomp and circumstance. There's people talking about how a lot of the Americans are looking quite overwhelmed by the enormity of Beijing. The forbidden city and its grandeur, and sort of how it makes a person feel small. Elon Musk is being weird as always, but David or Joe, one of you guys want to kick off with your sort of what you're seeing, what you're taking away?
I've been seeing very little, although the little that I've seen is how positive Fox has been on China. I'm going like, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's a different language.
They got together and they said, okay, there's a playbook and we're going to follow it. It's almost like there was a plan moving forward, and there's always a plan moving forward. I think if you're trying to read what the intention is, obviously the plan is to make a good to make a good impression on China. And I think the war that Trump started basically has forced him into this corner where he has to be nice to China. I mean, that's really it. And I think if he wants to try to get, if he's trying to get out of it and negotiate a way to sort of land on his feet, he's got to figure something where, I mean, like China's a huge player in the energy market, and it's like It's in there. It's getting its fuel from Iran. I hear like you have these, and this is what for me it's hard to know whether it was an AI video I saw of the Canadian professor talking about how the Chinese fuel tanker just ignored the blockade under protection of the Chinese Navy. But it's not inconceivable that that's a kind of scenario that America has to face, right? It's like China has energy needs, Iran has oil, and it will want to do what it needs to do. And if you force, or you try to force the hand of China that much, then it's just going to bite back, right? China is known for how it deals with things, especially from a trade perspective. So yeah, he's really forced himself into a situation where he has to play nice, and to the point that he's being like it's unrecognizably nice, as in I'm not sure how much people have lost on the poly market betting scene right now, and in terms of like waiting for faux pas to arrive. But it's someone took away his phone.
I don't know. I think he got it back last night.
Oh, okay.
With the Thucydides trap. David?
Yeah, I think. I think the Thucydides trap is really important, because it's China that brings it up, Xi Jinping that brings it up, and Thucydides is the situation. Is trap is a situation where the incumbent, the upstart and the incumbent, basically. The upstart takes over the incumbent by killing the incumbent, basically. So this is the case where very often it ends up in war. The examples people give for it not ending in war is the Cold War, which I'm not sure if it was really the same thing, because I don't think it was a case of an upstart trying to overtake the incumbent. I don't think Russia and the Soviet Union was ever in that situation from kind of a global economic perspective.
Yeah.
But China is in that situation, and in many ways, China has already overtaken it. And it's just that it's the dead man walking, not realizing in that way. So, is there going to be war? I think it's really the question, and that's Taiwan. The things I heard, as reported from the sort of various senators in America, was statements to say, we have to stand by Taiwan. We have to be, kind of protect Taiwan on the basis of freedom and stuff. Incidentally, the only reason why Taiwan is a situation is because pretty much all of the world's microchips are fabricated there.
Yeah.
And certainly all of the really advanced microchips that are done are there. And it's actually very hard to move, because these facilities are really expensive to build, and the workforce are really skilled in them. You're not going to turn a farmer into someone who can work in one of these facilities overnight in that way. And that's kind of that issue. And I don't know what the answer is. The part of this which people don't necessarily realize is China has been preparing for this moment for a decade. Since the first time when I mentioned just before the show, when Xi Jinping went to visit Obama, and a cartoon caricature of Pooh and Tigger came out, where Obama was Tigger and Pooh was kind of walking by the side. And it was very friendly, but this kind of positioning of the tiger is the Obama and Pooh is that a little bit of an idiot bear is Xi Jinping. That started shifting China away from the US, from dependency on the US. And when Trump came in the first term, that really tipped it. And so China now has a year's worth of oil supply of its own. It makes its fertilizers from coal. It has managed to broaden its Belt and Road to expand its export and import from other countries. It has expanded its copper dependency and mineral dependency in Africa away from the US. It trades in its own currency, and it trades in commodities. So when it goes along with a country in a developing world and it says, well, let's do a trade along, it will say, well, you know what, you make palm oil, so let's trade in palm oil units in that way. And so it's actually moved itself into a situation where it can face what's happening quite happily and independently. For all the countries around, it's actually remarkably resilient to everything that Trump is trying to throw at it, because it has spent at least a decade and a half, weaning itself off from the US. And so war becomes really this thing where it's actually preparing for, it's increasing its connections. Putin is going to visit China next. You know, kind of all the heads of states. What is happening now? And just before this, Xi Jinping was out meeting all the heads of states along with, you know, kind of along the Belt and Road, Tajikistan and all the rest of it, going all around the world. So it is building up an alliance that is greater than what America has. America has only got its own military force. And you know what? It's like that comment of that war in Ukraine. You know, in the first year, before it started, people thought Russia had the most powerful army in the world. Then in the second year, they realized that actually had the second most powerful army in Europe. And in the third year, realized it had the second most powerful army in Russia. And that was up on its way. And what the Gulf in Iran is showing is actually, you know, American military power is kind of stymied. It just can't.
Where is China still dependent? Because I mean, it's got a lot of American cash reserves, right? That's important to it. Right? Where is it dependent?
It's a question of how willing are you to bear hardship and pain. So in the global economy, if the economy collapses, and a war between China and America will bring that about, without a doubt. And a war over Taiwan will do that, because you're going to cut off semiconductor supply, which is basically in everything from your phone to, you know, your vape that you have. You're going to find that everything kind of grinds to a halt in that way. So it's a question of who is going to be most willing to bear the hardship and pain.
And we know that's China.
And American public is not willing to do that. They're going to vote out whatever the government is in power in that way.
And you don't think any, like in America and in China, I mean, the commitment to building the semiconductor factories must be happening.
Oh, they're doing it. You know, TSMC is building, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is massively trying to build out on, you know, kind of to keep in good terms with America, because America is a major client, especially when America has forbidden it to sell its advanced chips to China. So it's trying to build it there. But at the same time, China is rapidly expanding its capabilities. And it's done so in some very clever ways. Instead of trying to make the chips smarter, it's trying to use the next level chips, more of it in parallel to get more done. And that's cheaper, and that's faster, and that's easier in some ways. So the Americans is very much about how do you make the most advanced even more advanced? That comment about, you know, we break the boundaries of physics in order to do this. And the Chinese is sort of says, we don't need to do that. We just need to do what we do a little bit easier and better in the form, and we can get ahead faster. So the Americans are trying to do it. But again, last year there was an issue with South Korea having this immigration problem with ICE, or maybe the beginning of this year, where it had this
that's right,
or whatever it was, and ICE raided it to kick a load of people out. You have to ask, why do the South Koreans think their workforce is better, that they have to bring them over to do the work, than to try and train Americans to work that way? That's a huge difference. When you're into that core manufacturing, you are about doing things that needs to be done. You don't want the Silicon Valley break everything approach. You don't want people who are brought up to say, I'm great myself. You know, you've got no right to talk to me like that. You just want people to get on with it.
Yeah, it's a massive cultural difference. Richard, Joe?
Yeah, I
Richard
me,
raised
one
his
of the-
eyebrows.
Yeah, one from me biggest aspect, particularly if you start talking military conflict, there is no doubt that American technology is vastly superior to what we have elsewhere. The problem US faces is that at the end of the day, there are two things that win your wars. It's industrial production and logistics. And while US logistics might be very strong, you do not have the productive capacity. You're already running out of a lot of munitions, taking on, frankly, a Mickey Mouse enemy like Iran. Because modern economies, and it showed in Russia, it showed on the Ukrainian side, very early in the conflict, you don't have the stockpiles to fight a long war, because wars today are not supposed to go on forever. It's supposed to be quick, and then you get it over with and you settle. When it becomes a drawn-out conflict, no one can compete with the industrial power of China, and that's going to become a very big problem for the US. And I think the conflict in Iran has exposed that weakness quite dramatically. That in order for you to become a long-term dominant player, you need a productive capacity to replenish your arsenal again and again and again. And there would be a lot of people, I suspect, quite worried in Pentagon about that aspect.
Yeah. Oh no, it's been really super interesting. I've always said when you go and I'm a great lover of Chinese history, and if you go back through its thousands of years of history, every single time China takes its eye off China and its people, it loses. And so, and if you look at what it's doing, China is always at the center. The country is always at the center, and then we've had the property issues, and we've had employment, and and these are these
right? Yeah, the middle king, the central kingdom, the middle kingdom.
Yeah,
that's the name of China.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that the Middle Earth? No, sorry, that was something else.
That's what the tech bros are paying attention to. All right, so Mandami in New York has delivered he's balanced New York City's budget within his first quarter, and I don't know if anyone wants to quickly comment on that before we move on. Anyone sort of see that news? I thought the socialist has succeeded, so I was kind of happy. U.S. consumer sentiment is 70% of the voters are against Trump based on how he's handling the economy. Because of all the gerrymandering that's going on, I was listening to Harry Enton's latest polls, and it doesn't mean that the Democrats are up for a blue wave, because they actually have to win more seats than they did before because of what's been going on with all this redistricting. But yeah, it's kind of like, it feels like the GOP always has to cheat to win. But there's a lot going on in the UK, and there's a couple of observations I've got. But as you are both, David and Richard, sitting in the centre of the Keir Starmer, Willie won't he? Thoughts?
Well, I mean, the Labour Party doesn't want Keir Starmer more than the electorate don't want Keir Starmer. I think that's probably what it is. The big swing to reform, a lot of it came from conservatives, a lot of it came from other people in that way. That's of course a swing along into Liberal Democrats that came along. And so, but the problem with Keir Starmer is that he faces the reality of the UK. It can't finance its welfare state. And as a Labour leader, that's a real problem.
Yeah, maybe he needs to get Mamdani over. A few tips.
Not gonna help, I'm afraid. The problems in the UK are enormously structural, like David is describing.
Yeah.
And I hold a sort of deep belief that whenever you need to tackle difficult expenditure decisions, they actually need to come from the center left. They will not come from the center right. And the reason is that if it comes from the center right, you get mass strikes and the whole country goes crazy. So Keir Starmer and the Labour Party had the
around with this
unique opportunity when they came into power with a majority that frankly made Parliament a non-issue. And I really do think that while he obviously has great credential in his previous job, the guy just doesn't get politics and doesn't understand how to maneuver in politics. When you have that kind of majority, you steamroll the legislation you need. And if you have an uprising of a few MPs that doesn't like it, you go to them and say, are you prepared to bring me down? Because if I get defeated on this vote, I'm calling a new election. And you get them in line. And he didn't do it because he wasn't prepared to do it. He didn't see that game unfolding. Now you wasted 2 years. The guy is a lame duck walking. Whoever comes in is going to face even tougher decisions than he did. And if you go, I don't think Labour can go Angela Rayner because she has no credibility. And if you get with the Burnham guy, he has almost as little credibility because they're all both left-leaning and there is no money to pursue the policies that they stand up and advocate for. And the market's going to call them immediately. You need to stop spending money you don't have, and you have to stop taxing the rich because no other country in the Western world has so few people contributing for the other people. It's crazy in the UK. It's like, I think the 50% taxation line is in the 90th percentile. It means that more than 90% of people in the UK pay less than half the taxes. And you keep on talking about the broadest shoulder and, come on, let's look at the numbers here. You cannot pursue these policies and the market will call them out on it. But for me, Labour wasted an absolutely unique opportunity to right a UK ship because I honestly think it has to come from that side.
All right. All right, I don't know who's messing around with the tiles, but anyway, who anyone? Because I was. Do you guys ever come across James O'Brien? He's a radio personality in the UK. I think it's LBC. He did a really I find him a really interesting guy. But what he's actually talking about is the media's role in destabilising British politics. And one of the things he's really furious about is the fact that Starmer and the rest of them didn't get the media landscape under control. And that's things like GB News, which is, Ofcom basically has no power and isn't doing what it needs to do. And so he's furious about that. He's talking about how Starmer's been trying to, kiss the ass of the Times, the Sun, GB News and the Daily Mail, all basically out for his blood. He's obviously not a charismatic leader. You'd think a country like the UK would like a boring leader after the chaos of Johnson and everything that followed him. But then Nick Bryant, who's from the BBC, he also wrote a piece about how the media is really sort of loving jumping into this fray, but it's actually destabilising politics. And he made this observation that Australia went through something similar after John Howard. Then there was like 10 years of just new prime ministers after new prime ministers. And it's like the country sort of said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. But yeah, the media role in destabilising democracy, because all media outlets are basically trying to work out how to make money. And to make money, you need eyeballs, and to make eyeballs, you need to have stories that capture eyeballs, right? So I think that's a big part of the story, because just yesterday I was saying that from an economic perspective, there's this quiet, positive situation going on in the UK where I think it's going to have more GDP growth than any other country in Europe this year. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It could just be one of those things that sort of passed my view. But like, is he being judged fairly in the times that we're in?
Well, he's made a couple of incredibly stupid decisions.
Right, yeah. No
And
question,
that stems, without any doubt, from naivety. Because he comes probably from a position in the CPS where he was surrounded by people of competence. And in politics, you are not. You know.
But does he deserve to be considered the worst? He's the most unpopular prime minister in British history. Does he deserve that label, or is that a sign of the times?
I doubt he's the most unpopular prime minister in British history. I think Jim Callaghan, when he was collapsing.
No. He is.
But I think the point is actually it's not politics. The politics is reflecting the problems which the countries in the world are facing, especially rich countries, because they consume at tremendous rates, and the government promise they can continue to do that. And every government is facing those issues. You know, the US is increasing its federal kind of borrowing, despite what Trump is saying of cutting it down. And there's just more noise about it, but these things show up in that way. And maybe, you know, kind of the UK is a bit like a canary in the coal mine. It's early in showing how the countries can't cope. Modi had to change his boundaries in order to win his massive thing, right? He redraw his boundaries, and he got this landslide elections. Even in the state where he redraw the boundaries, he got a landslide election, which is hardly surprising in that way. So politicians, smarter politicians are using tricks to try and hide it, to become more popular and maintain their popularity. But the core of it is that we cannot sustain this pace in that way. You know, the nominal growth is not reflecting in people actually being able to pay their bills. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how great you paint it, how great everything is. And what happens in the UK is, you know, they do vote along, and there are other voices. And, you know, Keir Starmer lacks that charisma to be able to go along and not make those choices or silly choices or whatever it is. But in some ways, I think he's just a canary in the coal mine. He's kind of foretelling what's going on in these rich countries around. Germany is going to have a similar situation along. Japan is in a really dire situation. South Korea is not better along in that way. And all these kind of post-industrialized countries. China itself, we talk of China being independent in that way, but it has a lot of these issues. It's heavily indebted. All of these countries are heavily indebted in that way. And it doesn't have the money to spend. You know, most countries have now lost their AAA status. Sovereign rating is not AAA anymore.
I mean, it ultimately comes down to the same thing. You need to stop promising things that doesn't get delivered economically because you haven't got the money. When will the electorate finally go for a politician that is telling them the truth rather than the promise of gold and green forests? Clearly not yet. I thought that time should have come in the COVID era.
Well, you don't have the politician to go and tell the truth. You have the I mean, you still have a generation of politicians and a general population of people who go through international studies. Learning about how the process should work in that way. It doesn't. It never has. It's always been a fiction of how, you know, how the UN brings the world together and how electoral politics works in whatever form. But it runs into a fragmentation, which is what's happening along. And that fragmentation happens is because at some point you get into a phase where you may not have all that resources to share in that way, in which case people start saying, I deserve more than you.
All right, I'm gonna put Joe in the middle. He can either talk about this or the fact that Singapore's prime minister went viral this week.
I missed that.
I'll say I'm not prepared enough to talk about that one yet, but I'll talk about the idea of what I think about politics. I think politics is not it is not the business of management. It's the business of marketing, and I think you're actually in the business of marketing to get support, to get first of all to get elected. But above and beyond that, you're actually in the business of marketing and creating the movements towards where it needs to go, right? So you have Singapore as a rather different, I would say, a beast in terms of how politics works in Singapore. But in especially in more developed democracies, you have to be in the business of pushing and directing and creating hope where there actually isn't. You know, you have to look at the problem and say, okay, this is the problem we have. How do we get out of it? I mean, I think it's remarkably easy and difficult at the same time to say that basically if the UK was just if everybody in the UK was just in a good mood and felt positive about things would be better. And that's where that charisma part of it comes into it. And this is why for me when I talk to my the clients who eventually come to me to speak about things, they realize that this is true as well, that you can be really good at all the technical stuff. You can be a great administrator. You can be good at all the KPIs and stuff. But when it comes down to it, people need to get a sense that they can believe in you and that you can communicate that feeling that you believe in them as well. And there's enough of that going around so you can build a culture around it. So the importance of charisma, unfortunately, is rather strong, despite what people tend to think about it. They see it as this big empty thing. The best combination, of course, is you have a combination of a charismatic leader with great administrative skills. I mean, you're blessed if you have that situation.
Integrity and wisdom too, right? Yeah, but integrity and wisdom as well. That's the triple whammy. Right.
Yeah, but like I said, usually it's one of those things where you have to choose one or two of the three, and maybe you're lucky, and that's all you'll get.
Yeah, no, okay. So Joe, your business opportunity is to train leaders to be charismatic, be good administrators, and have integrity and wisdom, and they're the new leaders the world needs all over the world, right? So Singapore's Prime Minister went viral. He's a year in, and obviously he's like the new generation of leaders in the PAP in Singapore. But talking about honesty and the situation that we're in, I'm finding, that there's no softening the blow. They're saying this is not a short-term issue. The pressures are likely to intensify. It's going to be worse than what we've seen in the past. It's going to eclipse what we've seen in the past. So they're sort of setting the groundwork, but then they're also reassuring, because of course Singapore's got this fantastic, what do you call that sovereign wealth fund?
Yeah,
that underpins everything. So it takes care of its people, and we saw that very, very clearly during the pandemic. It was really quite stunning for me coming from Phuket to Singapore and talking to going to get a manicure and a pedicure, and how did you guys survive? And they got 75% of their salary from the government, right? So it really does take care of its people, which I find incredible. But yeah, so it was one of the titles is drops truth bombs on Trump about the Iran war. So that's why he went viral. From a climate perspective, there's a lot in the collection of articles that I sent to you. Is there anything that's come out in the last week that anyone wants to comment on? I'm just looking at the time.
I mean, I think the main thing is really the increasing reports about the Super El Nino, right? That's coming along. I think that's really quite interesting. That first of all, it's being really picked up now, and even the conservative estimates are now saying the weight of probability, the strong weight of probabilities that is going to happen this year. And this makes it kind of quite unique in going from El Nino to El Nino within 1 year as that kind of transition. So weather pattern changes are coming much faster, and also the ocean temperature increases are going to be higher. So I think there is not much said about the actual economic linkage, partly because it's hard to really anticipate what that does. But the idea that actually, weather variability, increasing uncertainty in weather variability is going to cost you in your pocket. That's basically it. I mean, the past couple of days here in the UK, we had hail, quite strong hail, come bearing down. And I was telling people we're quite lucky because these are ordinary hail-sized hails. In America this year, they've seen baseball-sized hails, that size coming down. When that hits your car, even if just one of those hits your car, then it's off to the body shop, and that's going to be a few $100s out of your pocket for something that happened simply because you parked, went in the shop, came out, and bang, that happened along that way. And I think that's the part which compounds on top of everything that's going on at the moment. So if the UK is running out of money for whatever reason it is, I think I was working out that petrol and diesel prices have increased to something like costing $1 billion a day for people who need to fill across the world. That's a day. That's been going on. That's a day. That's stressing governments which have reserved funds to try and help people, since draining all of those along in order to subsidize them in that way. And if you then add on additional disruptions coming from the fact that it either gets too hot or too wet or too dry or too cold or whatever it is, then you're coming into an end of year which is actually pretty difficult. Undoubtedly, the stock markets are going to keep rallying. In the sense of what we talked about, right? Because it's this circle of investing in itself that's going on, and it can't stop, because if you stop, it collapses. It's the whole nature of, the South Sea or the tulips or whatever it is in that sense. So, so the thing that caught me in that way is actually the increasing awareness that we have this major weather situation. What also caught me is the way in which people are still distant in how that actually affects them and what it means.
Yeah. So, David, when you weren't here a few weeks ago, we had Ollie on. We were talking about a link that they think that this El Nino will be as bad as one that happened in the late 1880s that killed 50 million people at the time. And a big reason, and the number that actually probably died was significantly more. They've said 60 million, but because it was mainly because of colonial reasons that people died. So basically in India, they took the food from India and shipped it to the UK and left the Indians to starve, right? But we're in a very, very different world now where India will hold on to its food. Thailand will hold on to its food. China will hold. It's already holding on to its fertilizer. So this is they basically was saying, the scientists were saying, in the spring you can't really predict an El Nino because there's all these variables, but we're moving into the summer. So that's it's not good news. But the other one was a report in Carbon Brief that was basically saying hitting 2 degrees C of warming, and we could potentially hit that in the next 12 months. I'll just give you an example. So last night I couldn't sleep. So if I can't sleep, sometimes I just have to get up and have a wander because it's the only thing I could do. And I checked the temperature. It was 3:15 a.m. It was 29 degrees Celsius, but the real feel, so the wet bulb temperature, was 37 degrees. So they think Singapore's going to hit, and its average will increase to 37 degrees. So based on that wet bulb temperature, that means that the average sort of feels like temperature during the day could be in the mid-40s. I can't even imagine. So I was at a party last night. I don't know if you were there, Joe. Outdoors.
Yeah.
Everyone was hot and uncomfortable. It was by the ocean. There were a few big fans around, but it was intense, and it didn't used to be like that here. It really didn't. But this 2 degrees C of increase, they're actually saying it could be worse than if there's an average outcome of 3 or 4 degrees Celsius. So less increase is actually going to be worse than more, and that's impacting things like drought. And so that I kind of like, well, and then the other big thing that's been coming out is the acceleration of sea level rise, which I don't know what percentage of the world's population lives on the ocean, but it's significant. But it used to be 0.2 meters a century, but now it's 0.2 meters. No, I don't know. I'm looking at these maths wrong. I've got 1 millimeter.
I think
4 millimeters from 1 millimeter, basically.
I think the problem in many ways, and there's a lot of talk about relying on science, going back to science and all the rest of it, and I think there's a problem with that, and it's kind of the early part of what you were saying, right? Scientists says the probability can't be sure and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You can't take that approach towards something like this, because by the time you're sure, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't keep saying scientists aren't sure as a way to say you don't have to do anything. You need to take a much more kind of a trading portfolio management, what Richard and I were kind of involved in, with kind of or Joe, in fact, that sort of approach of actually saying, in my best judgment, what's the best thing for me to do? It's not about being right. It's what happens if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
If I wait until I'm proven right and then go and do that, it's too late. The opportunity is either gone or you're dead.
Yeah.
And that's the situation the world has with facing what we're talking about in terms of the poly crisis in all its different forms and so on. It is waiting, in a sense, for kind of the academics, for the experts to come out with the definitive answer before they say, well, that's okay. In the meantime, we'll just continue as we do because, that's okay now. That's all. It's not actually asking what happens if these experts aren't experts at all. What happens if they're wrong? Or what happens if they are right, but it just takes them too long to come up with the fact that it's right?
Yeah. That's the criticism towards the IPCC, right? It's outdated by the time it's public, and it's too,
And it's not just
Hansen, right?
you see, it's not just the IPCC. It's even in the new Santa Marta conference. When they set up this sort of scientific committee and things, in that way, it's trying to preempt that. But again, we are far too evidence based.
Yeah.
You need to trust your gut a bit in this way, but we don't. We're far too evidence based. We believe in this holy grail of evidence base, which means either you're dead or you're too late.
Yeah.
I hate to quote Marco Rubio. Paraphrase.
Interesting.
Well, again, this is from the movie that I was watching, so it's about he was referring to UAPs and stuff, but there's a strange thing that's happening in the US where the most bipartisan thing that is currently being talked about in America is UAPs, right? Both sides are interested in learning and finding out, getting policies out about that.
And by the way, that's unidentified things in the sky, right?
The new name for UFA, UFOs is unidentified aerial phenomenon. I think it is. I'm not sure. Yeah. But his point about this was actually about how human beings have a terrible tendency, I'm paraphrasing, but terrible tendency to not be able to imagine what they haven't seen before. So the examples he gave was basically about how how terrorists would train themselves to be commercial pilots, to use planes as a weapon, and he gave some other examples as well. But basically, the idea was we're very poor at contemplating this thing that we haven't seen before. So the apocalyptic world that we are predicting, that we I would say we're on the path for. It's very hard to imagine, which is why I've often said this, right? It's up to the artists to do a good job of this. The artists need to tell the convincing story, because that's what the story. Right now, it's being told by people in a way that allows us to escape, right? So we need the day after phenomenon to happen for this particular generation, where it's clear enough and real enough and visceral enough for the audience to realize, oh, something if something really, really needs to be done. And then this is why, for me, I do fear that that's going to be the news, where you're going to get the news one day and go like, well, this island's gone. You know, and that's and it needs to be dramatic as well. I mean, it's like, for us, if you think about how that sealed in an impression in your mind when you heard about Chernobyl, when you heard about Fukushima, right? That's the kind of thing that we need for weather. You need that kind of dramatic. Unfortunately, you need that dramatic moment to happen, and people to go like, and be trapped logically. They go like, there's no other way to think about this, and go like, you know, that's the undeniable example or proof of all this happening.
Can I just say, Joe, if we like the videos of the Great Barrier Reef being completely bleached and dead is not enough. The Fijian villages basically washed away and everyone's had to move up the hill. It's not enough. The entire, you know, islands full of people that have been moved to mainland in Central America. It's not enough. The amount of rubbish that's in our environment, it's not enough. The amount of people that have to go through IVF because their endocrines disruptors that are in the environment basically are destroying their ability to get pregnant, it's not enough. You know, so I don't know, you know, like, so last week when we had Praveen on and we were talking, he's very concerned about the AMOC and he's living in Mumbai. And before we got on the call and I was having a chat to him, I said, why do you give a shit about the AMOC? Like, honestly, we'll be long gone before the AMOC collapses, especially when those of us living near the equator and in the hot zones and the tropical parts of the world, like long gone. And if we keep waiting for something that's going to shake us all out of this stupor, it's already too late.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've already lost the coral reefs. You know, that was last year. What's it going to take? You know, so I honestly, like, it's the most confused as a communications person, right? Trying to convey this message, how to do it, what to say. Like, even within climate communities, you can get pushback for being too depressing. And it's like, but like when I saw the temperature last night, right, at 3:15 a.m., it feels like 37 degrees. That's not Singapore temperature, you know. So we've got this big heat, this big explosion of heat that's going to come in the next 12 months. This region will be screwed.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, is that going to be enough? You know, but then is it too late? You know, so it's kind of like this. It's such a, it's the most, I got to tell you, from an intellectual perspective, just sort of looking at this purely from a, how do I do this better, and how, you know, and you know, I know all the tactics and I know the charisma stuff, and I know from a PR perspective, right? How do we do it when even in the climate community, people can't cope? When you go out, you know, I know people avoid me because they think I'm just going to talk about depressing stuff. I know they do. But I don't want to talk about depressing stuff. I want to have a good time and enjoy life because I know it's worth celebrating. Like my son, Jax David, you'll be happy to know he had his last IB exam today. So he is officially finished. And, you know, so when he walked in the door, Steve and I grabbed him and jumped up and down and did something stupid. Right. I'm all about, like, let's just celebrate life, because every day you wake up, we're still here. And I just want to make the world a better place and hopefully get enough people coming along for the ride that we make enough changes that make a difference. But I don't know. Anyway, so David?
Absolutely. And you just prompted me. I'm going to give a shout for myself, if that's okay, which is that I'm restarting It's For You, which is something that Richard and I were doing, and Andrea was involved way back. But this time is actually more holistic. It's more integral. It involves a new currency that's made by leaving oil and gas and coal in the ground. It involves a spontaneous network of what I kind of call Thrive Academies, which is how we can make a living for ourselves without having to start with money in that way, but supporting each other in that. And it involves a series of events called We're Always Glad You Came, to connect people with those things in between. And we do that now. We don't wait, because time for waiting is over. Waiting is no longer an option. And if you want to find out more about that, get in touch with me. I want to do that with using London Climate Action Week to kickstart that. in that time. So it's for you. So just go along and connect with me in that way.
Yeah, I like it. I like what Going South here. So-called doomers are the cheeriest people in climate, and he is right. He's absolutely right, because you can be cheery when you've looked it in the eye and said, oh, okay, here we go. You can actually be cheery. So yeah, but Joe, just the final one. Meet the sad wives of AI. Did that get your attention?
Well, I must say, like today's show, because of the work schedule I had, I wasn't able to do my usual catching up, but I have a good sense of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing about the path of least resistance, right? The ability to get some of your basic needs met through the digital realm. Unfortunately, it's part of the reality. I think that began even before AI. I think AI has added an extra dimension to it, but I think we've been in this space for quite a long time. In the sense that I think if you talk about pornography, or you talk about access to erotica, someone spoke to me about the issue about relationships, and the idea of just seduction and stuff like that being a problem a long time ago. And it wasn't even I was this conversation that I had was back in the 90s. So I think it's sort of the amplification of the problem, as in, like, if you talk about like how technology, when there's a media technology or something else that's released, right? The porn industry sort of is the first place that deploys most of it. So you talk about stereoscopic, or you talk about interactive video, you talk about the porn industry figures a way to make it to do it in a way that's commercially viable for its audience. And I think AI now adds a dimension on top of this because of the ability to create something that is not pre-scripted. It seems it's something that can be dynamically created. So I'm assuming that that's the competition that the sad wives of AI are up against right now.
It sounds when I was looking at it, it sort of sounded like what I saw during the .com boom. There was so much bullshit, because I was working with all these startup founders out of MIT. You can imagine it, right? And it was just blah, 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 and I was cynical then. I'm not a cynic by nature, but I could imagine if I was still in the middle of that now, I'd be like, oh. And I'm very happy that my husband has no interest in AI whatsoever, and that's good. I'm probably the one that's a little bit more interested. But anyway, there's lots of other things. Things are going off in Bolivia, which is another polycrisis situation where we're just going to start seeing more and more of this happening. But what's keeping you distracted? Who wants to go first? David? Now that you're hopefully feeling better.
Yeah, I mean, certainly coming back from this conference and this, what I just mentioned about is for you. So I'm very distracted by pushing forward with that. But I'm also been watching Legends, which is really fantastic. It's a UK series, and it's about how the UK customs force was able to take down during the time of Thatcher, kind of the drug lords and the drug rings in that way, with a shoestring budget of zero. Zero training and stuff, just pure kind of British guts, I guess, in that way. So it's absolutely fantastic, especially if you're used to watching things like Homeland and so on, where you've got unlimited resources, satellites, and everything else. This is the opposite. It's brilliant.
Nice. All right, Richard.
I'm afraid it's back to my veg. It's the busiest season of the year. Everything's going in now. It's like potting all the time, expanding the greenery of food production within my premises. It's exhausting, to be perfectly honest, but also rewarding. and I still have no news on the asparagus. We're still waiting.
I was going to say, is asparagus gone?
I fear for them.
I got some Jerusalem artichokes come out.
That's impressive.
Which
They're not easy.
I had at Christmas time before going off. I'd been in the fridge for too long, so I buried them. They're coming out.
Can you imagine living in a place where there's basically no seasons?
Yeah, I can't imagine.
So, we just grow stuff all year round, and the only time I've seen things not go well is when those really, really hot days. If you don't get the water in, But so far we're all right.
You haven't had me come and help.
You don't want to be out there in the heat. Joe? Now, you were talking about something, Joe, earlier that you've been watching. What was it?
Oh, the movie. The movie is called The Age of oh man, my brain these days. The Age of It'll come. The Age of My Age, the Age of Myself. Here, let me look for it on the computer and find it for you. In the meantime, what I can do is I can tell you something else as well about a show that I watched, which I watched so that you don't have to.
Okay.
The series is Citadel. It was quite hyped for a while when the first series came out on Hulu, on Prime, and and had good reason to be hyped about it as well, because it had a few good stars. The interesting idea of it was a whole spy ring and stuff like that. But I think they ran out of good writing as they launched season 2. So I watched season 2 and I was quite disappointed with it. So if you see it and it's being recommended to you, I'll save you the 7 hours it would take to see season 2. It's not as good a show as you might hope it to be if you like season 1. The Age of, and I can almost get it here. Let me see. Give me a moment. Everybody hang on. Well, tell you what, why don't you do this? Andrea, you go ahead first.
Yeah. Is it a documentary or a movie?
It's a documentary. It's The Age of Disclosure. Sorry, The Age of Disclosure. And it features interviews with high-level people in the U.S. So it's including Marco Rubio and some other faces that you wouldn't quite expect to see in a movie about UFOs.
It's Marco Lu this week, wasn't it? In order for him to get into China.
It's a different Chinese name. Yes, Marco Rubio 1.0 and his original Chinese name is still banned from China, but they gave him a new Chinese name to allow him to come in this time.
Yeah, I think it's Marco Lu. So on Saturday, I went and saw The Devil Wears Prada 2. And have you seen it? Yeah.
Only the first.
Oh, right. Okay. Cool. It was, well, first of all, none of them have aged, which, there's a lot of commentary about that. But the 20-year gap between what's happened in the media space, information space, social media attention spans, women, the character that's constantly saying to Meryl Streep's character, no, you can't say that. Whereas 20 years ago, she said whatever the hell she wanted. I found it really, really interesting the way they explored that. So to me, that was a lot deeper than just the fashion and everything else. But there's another movie that's just come out on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's called Remarkably Bright Creatures. And Sally Field is the main character. She plays a grandmother. And it's sort of about her relationship with this octopus called Marcus.
Yeah.
And Marcus is in an aquarium, and it's the only that's who she speaks to through her problem. She's lost her son, she's lost her husband. And then this young man comes into town and they build a relationship, and he builds a relationship with Marcus. And it's a very heartwarming movie. So if you're looking for a distraction, something that makes you feel good, which is what I'm always looking for, I found it really delightful. Yep. And I'm bummed I didn't watch it with Steve. So and he has no interest in watching it now. So, but anyway, I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Going South for your great comments. I still don't understand. We've got Biplab. I don't know if you guys know Biplab Barman. And obviously Steve left a comment. So we always appreciate it when people get involved. And Ollie will be checking in later because he always does. But yeah, there's another week. There's a lot of stuff we didn't cover, but we never get through it all. But keep the faith, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep the faith. Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. And you know what? I'm extremely realist. I think, like you said, I'm extremely realistic about the implications of all the commodity crisis, which makes me actually very optimistic, because you kind of have to embrace it to see.
Here we go. Doomers on 3.
that is, when you can see it, you can look beyond it. But until you face it, you can't look beyond it. So that's the acceptance, right? Yeah, yes. Totally agree.
Indeed.
All right, we'll see you guys in a week. All right.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.